We're interested in building a Gotthard Tunnel from here to Holland.
You have to speak louder. Otherwise,
He said we're interested in building a Gotthard Tunnel from here to Holland.
a connection, what a tunnel you say?
A Gotthard Tunnel. The Gotthard Tunnel. So the Gotthard Tunnel goes under the Swiss Alps,
Yeah.
from the German-speaking.
Both ways, and
Yes.
somehow meet in the middle.
Yes, and we can trust the
I think
meeting.
there were a number of topics where this tunnel could start. So one of those topics was the work that you've done about the Grail sites and about Parzival. And we just saw this whole subject of Parzival, and we were looking at the whole subject of the British Isles and Gawain, and how Parzival has to overcome Gawain before later Parzival meets then Fearfits. And this process from Gawain, from Arthur and the British Isles, then to Gawain, then Parzival overcoming Gawain, the Gawain-Parzival nature, and then coming to Fearfits and this whole thing with the magpie.
From the old aristocracy to the new freedom.
Yeah, that is a much broader view. You know, that's something I'm right now concerned with, because I'm translating the book, retranslating the book. I have it here in my bag. It's a big tome. See this? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's in the bookshop.
It's a padarak, how the Grail sites were found.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And it's Wolfgang von Eschenbach is a historian. But I've been retranslating it now for the last week or so, and I'm right now in a section where Werner Groep imagines a new ending to the Wilhelm. I mean, very many people look at it negatively. They talk about a Muslim invasion of Europe, weakening the culture, and eventually demographically taking over, because they have more children than we do, you see. But you can also look at it positively.
Of course.
If you look at it positively, it is, from a Christian point of view, the only added you can have to Islam is to show that it is a unfinished, authoritative father religion which has no Christ figure, no freedom impulse, and no Holy Spirit.
Is it younger or older, would you say?
The significance of this book is in this sense is contained in the chapter Wilhelm and Arabelle, and I made the subtitle, How a Christian Count Managed to Convert an Arabian Princess. Mm-hmm. Right? And that is in fact, I have a guest in my house in Amsterdam, a Romanian filmmaker who's made films. He's been in Hollywood, and I've got him interested in this book. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do is not to make a documentary and not to make a film, but a docudrama. Mm-hmm. A docudrama about this work of Groep. Mm-hmm.
Would you like some help with the screenplay?
Sorry?
Would you like some help with the screenplay?
Are you looking for people to collaborate on such a project who would be interested in?
It's this work of Groep. I was astounded by the depth and the literature, the acrobacy of his work. Mm-hmm. And there's also an imaginative ending of the Wilhelm, mm-hmm. You know, which is about Reneward finding out that he's been fighting against his own folk, mm-hmm. That he killed his own brother, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that he was captured in Arabia and taken to the court of Louis the Pious, mm-hmm. and put to work in the kitchen as a kitchen work. Well, he was a prince's son, and he in the second battle he goes with Wilhelm and defeats the Arabs there, and that's where this chapter begins. That he finds out he killed his own brother. That he sees the Arabian ships sailing away in the sunset. It's a tremendous visual images also. And then he fell in love with the daughter of the king, Alice. King Pi is the brother of Charlemagne. Okay, but he was of course brusquely turned away because he was a kitchen helper. There was no match for her. But then he realizes he is the son of Terramer, the leader of the Arabian army, and then he is he is going to go to Orleans, and if necessary, kidnap her. So I don't want to maybe tell the whole story because you read it there, but it's very topical. It's about courtly love and courage,
and also recognizing when one perhaps has been working in an opposite direction to what one thought one had been. Does that make sense?
Because he didn't realise he was fighting his bro.
On a spiritual path, a moment when he realises perhaps what I was thinking I was doing was very good and right and righteous, was in fact the opposite of what I thought I was doing. Would I be right in saying that's the moment he comes to in his life? When he sees that he's defeating his own fault?
Maybe you're talking about the Parzival principle. The Parzival principle, which is the Aya principle. The plot of the Parzival is, a friend of mine had just written a book about the way to Parzival, from Dummheit via Zweifel nach Selbe. That means from naivete, instinctive consciousness, where you're connected with everyone, and
from stupidity to doubt to
via one hope. That is one hope. What is that? Doubt.
Delusion.
Doubt is extreme. Extreme doubt is when you don't know.
Questioning the meaning of existence.
Yeah, it's but you're completely lost. Huh? You're completely, and it's a necessary phase of every teenager has to do this. They have to from this whole world consciousness, you have to create self-consciousnness. The only way to do that is to set yourself off against the world and be thrown back to yourself. That's the middle phase where Parzival is killing everybody.
But that wasn't quite what Richard was saying.
What do you think?
Let him finish what the final part.
The final part is when he reaches, when he comes at the depth of his depravity, he comes to the Hermitage and meets Trebizond on Good Friday, and then he stays there 2 weeks, and he's introduced to the secrets of the Grail Society, and within a couple of months, he comes back and becomes king of the Grail. And
that's what I mean. You're right. In that time when he was killing, going around saying God is dead, and in going through that phase, then he comes at some point to a realization and turns to come back within the Grail community.
See, psychologically speaking, it's the path of humanity from instinctive bewusstsein, where you have animal bewusstsein, you don't reflect on anything, you just do and don't reflect, through intellectual bewusstsein to intuitive bewusstsein. And the world is now on the verge from how do we get from an intellectual bewusstsein to an intuitive bewusstsein? Because the intellectual bewusstsein leads to It leads to nothing. That's where the books by Witzemann come in, that I'm translating. You know, he's translated partly this book on the unbiasedness of anthroposophy, about the primal words of human existence, and then he argues that the present intellectual, materialistic world civilizational principle leads without fail to the war of all against all, to nothingness, and to suicide. See, and so we're on the cusp of.
Yeah, well, this is what I think. This is a big question. This question for many people, especially in the last 2 years, the question of mental health and suicide, where people come, they can't find an access to the society that we have around us, and part of that. Another aspect of that is also seeing, like I said, when one sees that maybe everything that you had devoted your life to was perhaps the opposite of what you thought it was. No. And that's a big crisis moment where you say, okay, a complete change from one moment to another, that I was perhaps previously before a kind of death or a kind of living death.
Yeah, well, there needs to be a reversal. As John said, you know, change your sentiment. And there's also Witzemann has talked about this. He said, you know, we have this feeling and will. Feeling is the reaction of something or somebody on you, and willing is when you react from you to something outside of you. But you have to reverse that. The feeling is no longer what reacts on you, but you feel what's happening in the world.
Could you say something just about on that point about how you feel about what's going on in the Ukraine? I mean, without mixing the two things up, but could you just say, because you were talking about a peace movement?
I've sent you, I think, my manifesto.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think I have that. Yeah.
And that I felt very urgent wish to write something and do something on February 24th, when so-called the war was 1 year old. Even though the war already started in 2005.
Funnily enough, this is when I met Jonathan.
Okay.
In this life.
Yeah. So I took some days apart, and I had been thinking about it a lot. But my main thought was that there is a parallel between what happened at the beginning of the First World War in Austria, when there was a tension between on the southern border of Austria, between the Serbs living in Austria and Serbs living in Serbia. They were clamoring for independence, but they didn't get it.
And so, do you think this could be like a tinderbox moment, where you have a similar?
Absolutely.
Because I also saw the similarities between 2020 and 1920 with the Treaty of Versailles, which was so determinant for all of the 20th century, and you couldn't help but look at what was happening after 2020 with the whole pandemic and the talk about reshaping the 21st century. Green agenda, the Great Reset, all of these kind of things, that there was a kind of movement to shape the 21st century, but with no real new ideas, just neoliberal ideas.
You see, ideas, practical ideas, are nourishment for the social organism. Social organisms can only live when there are practical ideas. If these do not come, the social organism will wither away and eventually die.
And then we have another tinderbox moment that comes out of this situation, because it's like the forest is so dry. Would you agree with that? Are we always, sorry to keep going on, but are we always going to be just putting plasters over wounds?
But not if I'm concerned. My manifesto was that I haven't mentioned it here in the General Assembly, and it's going to be published by the anthroposophy worldwide. I have for the first time, it's kind of a door, a kind of a breakthrough, that they're welcoming my writings, which is something that hasn't happened in 30 years.
Hooray!
Sebastian Jummel, who is the redactor. He's going to publish. I'm hopping away from various topics, but anyways,
that's good. That's good.
I wrote after the first couple of days of General Assembly. I wrote an article, which I later titled "The Gotthard Tunnel as a Grail Castle under the dominance of Confortos." And I made a connection with the Grail, with the Parzival form, which I managed to get a ticket. One of the members of the Vorstand didn't show up, and I was able to buy it, and I got a front row seat where the Vorstand was supposed to sit.
One of the true member of the Vorstand.
I don't know if that's true, but maybe the underground
temporary
one,
at least.
The underground one. Yeah, I think it's a time for that.
Yeah.
So,
changing chairs, musical
so
chairs.
I wrote it's going to be published, and I can always send it to you in English, but the idea was that this opera, this Mysterian opera of the Mystery of Parzival, took place only a stone throw away from the Adelsheim Hermitage, from the hill Hornikopf, where on halfway up the hill in a Roman quarry, the Grail Castle was built by Trevisan, and on Pentecost,
behind you, in fact,
Pentecost
right now.
884, Parzival succeeded Amfortas as Grail King. So the opera, which is showing this, took place
just
away
outside.
from there. I made this correction, but then I said
We're here right now.
I said the anthroposophy has been called by Rudolf Steiner in his book Geheimwissenschaft im Umwelt, called Science,
in outline.
In outline, he is called anthroposophy, science of the Grail, right? And he has said this. So you can call the Anthroposophical Society Grail Science Society, right?
Beautiful.
According to this statement by Rudolf Steiner. But I said there was no trace of any Grail consciousness in the General Assembly, in the sense of the elevated Grail consciousness of Parzival. Instead, for the upsteen's time, we had a mixed king of spirituality and administration.
Very good point.
There was no
fire
connection with the spiritual world through what Rudolf Steiner advised to do, namely the reverse ritual, right? Through the reverse ritual, the Anthroposophical Society could achieve what he later called the new Christianity. It's moving apart from the Christian community, which most anthroposophists know nothing about. They refer, with all respect, to the Christian community when it's a question of Christian ethics and consciousness.
What was in the performance of Parzival, what was the image or the scene that you liked the most? Were you there on Sunday?
No, I was there on the premiere.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I must say, in general, that when I first saw that Parzival in Zurich, 20 years ago or something, 20 years ago, I came out and I was speechless. I couldn't speak a word for hours and hours. I was completely flabbergasted. I was so impressed by this opera, which wasn't the case here. This performance was very well staged.
But not the performance, but the story. What part of the story spoke to you most?
There wasn't really a particular thing that impressed me. What impressed one was the staging was very, very, the mixture of eurythmy
But you said before.
So the life and the cracks.
There was one time before you said to me, I mean, looking at the story of Parsifal. Okay, I mean, I was also in the performance at the weekend, and just looking at the bits of the story that affected your soul, or the imagery, or like for me, it was very significant. The colour, of course, at the end there was the pink kind of Grail, yeah. And for me, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole looking at Gawain and then Theophids, and for me, this was how I found an access to it this weekend. And I was interested in what I know you've said to me before. One of the key things about the Anthroposophical Society is people need to learn to get off their horses and put down their weapons, and this is where they find the secret entrance to the Grail castle. And if I make a reference back to our talk, the question at the beginning that I put to you about building a Gotthard Tunnel between us, I wonder if you could speak to these different images.
Well, the thing that impressed me in Zurich 20 years ago was above all the music. The music impressed me. Even though, and I didn't hear the words, I couldn't understand the words because I didn't understand the words here either in the Great Town, because the acoustics are very bad.
And they don't have subtitles.
No, they don't have subtitles. But as far as digging a tunnel from here or between us, what that means is, what the method is, what Witzmann called, he talked about the große und der kleine Wesenstausch. And that means that the great exchange of being and the small exchange of being. And the great exchange of being is your relationship to the thoughts, to the world. If you exert a proper thinking act, the content will undoubtedly appear without fail. It doesn't hide from you. And then
the force is with you.
And it means you have to intuitively connect yourself with the content of the concept. And it's this vertical exchange of being between you and the spiritual world that
lose the force.
Practice that, you should then practice it on the horizontal aspect with other beings. You let, and that his book, The Virtues. I don't know if you know it. The Virtues.
Yes.
In the Seasons of the Soul is actually, the whole book is one great exposition of what Rudolf Steiner called the
lightsabers and their multiple uses.
The primal social phenomenon, according to Goethe, where if two people have a conversation, you let the one who is speaking take over your thinking completely. You completely give in to the other, and
this enables an exchange.
And this enables an exchange of being, and the two persons in conversation become one.
Shall I tell you? I'll tell you an interesting story from the people. A lot of people know in Switzerland, when they first opened the Gotthard Tunnel. Often, when people were driving in this tunnel, they would find the dead sitting next to them in the cars.
They would find what?
The dead.
The dead?
Sometimes people would be driving and a dead person, a ghost, was sitting beside them.
Okay.
And this didn't continue, it was just in the beginning.
Presumably the dead from it being built.
I didn't know that.
From it being built, or from, I don't know, from the villages, I don't know the details. But it's interesting that when one first builds a tunnel, if we go with this image, when one first builds a tunnel between two people, perhaps at the beginning you have to sift through some of the ghosts that are around. And certainly this was one of my feelings.
Shells of thoughts discarded.
Like New Year's Eve this year, with the burning, And also in all these 100-year anniversaries, and sitting here in the Gotthard Tunnel now having this conversation.
With the Grail castle behind
With
Robert.
the Grail castle behind us. There are ghosts that one has to perceive and has to maybe lay to rest before one can understand what is it that lives between two people and what can be exchanged. Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking for us, you and me, but this is a question for everyone.
Yeah, well, the images here above is the representative of humanity. Mm-hmm. That is actually
you have to imagine that one.
You know, this
You're under its feet.
Is actually this figure there with a
lovely flowers. Sorry.
Is a guardian to what you can call God's kingdom on earth. This is something I think also Rudolf Steiner attempted, but in the future kingdom of God on earth, or the kingdom of heaven, there are no more influence of the demons. There's no more Ahriman, and Ahriman has been overcome, and Lucifer has given in, has become the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. You see, and so for this pure tunnel to be built, all these Ahrimanic and Luciferic influence have to be overcome or recognized. With Ahriman, it's a question of recognizing. When he's recognized, he can do no longer anything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's why he wants to operate in the dark.
We have only a few more minutes left. I was wondering, do you want to, just before we go, we could just have maybe a cup of tea or something?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah? And then we have to go. I mean, I hope we can meet another point, and thanks for sitting here.
Well, you know, these were just some sporadic remarks.
I think it was a very nice conversation, and I'm glad that we filmed it. And
we need to make a lot of footnotes to this and work it out. Maybe it's a good beginning. It's a prelude. Maybe it's a good beginning for the Gotthard Tunnel. But I welcome your initiative. I'm certainly going to work on it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, let's think about that and carry that as an image.
And I think also even the Gotthard is now listening to me.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
After all this time, and it's. I don't have that much time or to.
I hope it isn't a detriment doing an interview with me.
But I'm glad to have spoken to you about this book also. Here you have this is the German original one, which is the first of a trilogy. It's actually the only one, and the second and third are an incredible insight what happened behind the scenes here. Because, for one thing, there's